I've been wanting to check out this brand for a long time, probably about as long as I've been running the channel. And I'm talking about Seagull. Now, over the years, I've seen plenty of their chronograph movements and watches from a variety of different brands. And I've even seen a 1963 made by one of their licensed partners. But I've never seen a watch from Seagull themselves. And I've always been wondering, what exactly is it they can do? Because in my mind, they're the Chinese watch brand. One with real history and heritage behind them, not an AliExpress mystery brand. So when they reached out and asked if I was interested in doing a review, I was pretty excited. And after perusing their catalog, this is the watch that I decided I wanted to check out. Their Pro 300 Diver, and that's because the blue version really caught my eye. But more importantly, it looked like a watch in a good size with ideal specs, a nice date down here at the 6, and at around $500, I figured it was the ideal watch to really see what Seagull can do. And I have to say, I've been pretty impressed with it. Right out of the box, it was giving me some serious Orient Star vibes, reminding me not only of the great Orient Star Diver, but also the first time that I ever saw an Orient Star and was just blown away by its quality. And then a little later on, I realized how good a comparison that was. Because at the same time, this also shares the similar weaknesses that Orient Star has these days. But we'll get to that in a little bit. But first, let's take a closer look at this one. Now, the Pro 300 has a 41mm case with a 47.5mm lug-to-lug. So this is one that is definitely more of a mid-sized diver, and members of the Slim-Wristed Club, sorry folks, you're kind of out of luck with this one. Now, for a 300-meter diver, it's also got a pretty decent thickness of 13mm, and that's from the closed case back to the top of the sapphire crystal. It's also a little bit heavy, I think sitting around 180 grams, give or take a link or two. But on your wrist, or at least on my 7.25-inch wrist, it feels well balanced on its bracelet. There's definitely some solid heft to it, but overall it's still very comfortable with no overhang. And if this wasn't clear before, just one quick disclaimer before we get any further, which is that Seagull provided this watch and they aren't asking for it back, hence the promotional tag. The overall design here is a bit 50 fathoms-ish, where it has a minimalist K-shape paired with a bulbous sapphire bezel. And the bezel coloring here is a little bit off compared to the rest of the dial, as it's a little bit more teal than the darker sunburst blue with the fume gradient, or fume gradient if you want to be picky. Now, the bezel does frame in the dial nicely, but it also seems just a little bit off with the coloring. And as for the action, I'd say the action would be good if it wasn't just a little bit stiff and a little hard to get a hold of. It's one of those where you just have to find the right spot to put your fingers. But once you do, the clickiness is nice. Although, I do need to point out that it is only a 60-click action, something I haven't seen in a while. The sunburst dial itself is beautiful, and the skeletonized hands are effective while still allowing you to take a lot of that in. There is perhaps a little bit more text on the dial than I would prefer, which is one of my common complaints with a lot of name brand watches these days. But what is here does line up nice and symmetrical with the frame date down below, and that does help it keep from feeling too cluttered. The indices aren't too tall, but they are tall enough to give the watch a little bit of a sense of depth. And I really do like how the cardinal points cut into the chapter ring, just to help bring everything together. The only thing that I really don't like with the design, and I think this is a big misstep, is down here at the 6. Right here on the raised chapter ring, where the minute indicators have been removed just to emphasize that it's been made in China. On one hand, I guess this does help keep the dial a little bit cleaner, but it does make the watch a lot harder to set when it just happens to be in that 10-minute area. And for me, that's just a really annoying, nitpicky kind of a thing. But other than that, it's a great looking watch. A really beautiful blue diver that seems to have some classical inspiration. Yet for me, the quality of the watch here, the fit and finish, is just as important in the story, which is why I was bringing up the Orient Star before, as all the elements on the dial are nicely done, while the brushing on the case is beautiful with nice sharp transitions to the polished chamfers. Now, the bracelet design here pairing with the watch is going to be a little bit controversial. It's going to be hit or miss with some just because of these very polished sides. And needless to say, if you're rougher on your watches, you're a professional desk diver, this one is not going to be for you, or at the very least, if you get it, put it on a strap. But either way, the brushing on the center links here are beautifully done. It's one of the things that just catches my eye whenever I'm wearing it. And for me, I think it's a pretty sharp looking design. It's just one that may be scratch prone. And before I forget, the crown here, as you push it in, it does disengage from the mechanism as you screw it in. Something a little rare in this price range. But my main point is that in terms of the quality of the finishing on the case and the dial, I'd say it's a cut above and impressively so at this price point. However, Lume is another story. And this is one of the areas where that Orient Star comparison falls completely flat. Because as a lot of us remember, Orient has some killer Lume. While this, the Seagull, is piss poor, just to be blunt. In my comparison test, I had it up against some stiff competition. But as you watch, it just blinks out before my Seiko monster is even halfway gone. So for a diver, it just sucks. However, I will say that one of the really cool things they did is with the bezel, where the entire thing, not just the markings, has this really cool faint glow to it. It's one of my favorite things about the watch, even if it is pretty short-lived. Which brings us to the movement. Now, Seagull is using their own ST2130, which according to the internet is yet another ETA 2824 clone. So you're going to have the same specs as a Sleeta SW200, or since we're talking Chinese watches, a PT5000. I think Seagull's been making this movement for a while, but since their watches aren't as popular in the rest of the world as they are in China, it's not as much of a known quantity as the others. Which is not necessarily a bad thing, but just something to think about if you're considering it. But let's start wrapping this thing up by going back to the bracelet. Now, I already talked about the design and that you should be a little bit careful if you're more scratch prone. But now I want to focus on the quality. And overall, I'd say it's a good, well-made bracelet. It's got nice solid links secured with classic push pins, a good fit with the female end links, and a partially milled clasp, where it has a nice milled hinge, but the rest of it is pressed with a 3 micro adjust. So again, it's a good, well-made bracelet. And if I was doing this review, say 4 or 5 years ago, that'd be the end of the story. You know, right about the same time I was looking at my Orient Star Diver. Because back then, this would have been a great, well-made setup perfectly appropriate for that $500 price point. But the thing is, a lot has changed in the last few years. And especially with micro brands and some of the better AliExpress brands, where quick release end links and a fully milled clasp with an on-the-fly adjustment system have become practically standard at this price point or below. So just like with Orient Star these days, while it's overall a good, maybe great bracelet, it also kind of feels a little dated or lacking in that way. And to be fair, this isn't just an issue with Orient and Orient Star, as you could easily throw in a lot of the big brands into this. Compared to some of the great micro brands out there, they just haven't really kept up. But bottom line here is that it's a great looking, well-made watch. I mean, it's a beautiful blue diver. And in terms of looks, as well as the fit and finish, I'd easily put this up against anything else around this price point. And in a lot of ways, I think you could argue that design and quality are the far more important things here, at least compared to Lume and a quick adjust on the bracelet. But at the same time, you gotta realize that the Lume here sucks, and that you're missing out on a few things you'd get with other brands, and that does hurt the value proposition a little bit. So in some ways, it is a little bit of a mixed bag. But as long as you know that beforehand and you're good with its limitations, it's a pretty sharp looking watch. And in a lot of ways, it is worth taking a second look at. Now, as usual, let me know your thoughts on this one down below, or on Seagull in general. Compared to some of the other Chinese brands, do you think they're a cut above and worth it? And as always, you guys know what to do down below. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. I'm Shane, this is Relative Time, and I'll see you next time.